established a step-by-step method for calculating avoided electric capacity costs, and also directed our evaluation working group for Focus on Energy to propose to the Commission a method for calculating avoided transmission and distribution costs for the purpose of evaluating Focus. This memo goes through a number of details, the method that EWG is recommending, the process they undertook to get there, the values that they're proposing, and then 4 separate requests. This memo did go out for comment on January 20th, and we received comments from the Wisconsin Utilities Association, Citizens Utility Board, and joint comments from Clean Wisconsin and Renew Wisconsin. Accounting for transmission and distribution costs in cost effectiveness testing is very common, according to the staff memo. The American Council for Energy Efficient Economy tracks this stuff across the country. They found 84% of states have a value for avoided T&D costs in their cost effectiveness testing. They found a wide range of those values between $12 and $200 per kilowatt year. And this, the evaluation working group put forward an approach here, and it's they went through quite a bit of detail to come up with the numbers. And a big piece of it is the data that they used is something that we can look at. It's transparent. It's something that we can look at year over year. So they came up with a method that led to a value of $66.22 per kilowatt year for 2018, and then that number would increase slightly in years to come, or over the period that they're evaluating at year. It increases modestly in years to come. So we have 4 decisions in front of us, and of course welcome any comments from my colleagues as well. But just for the sake of expedience, I am going to be at alternative 1 for all 4 of these proposals to approve the methodology. And then within that is to direct staff to pursue modifications to the reporting to help us get more information about what types of expenses are being incurred. I'll also be supporting to review it annually. I think Wisconsin Utilities Association made a very good point about distribution costs being related to meeting electrical codes. And so I think that's one thing that could be reviewed in future years by the EWG, that point. In addition, alternative 1 on the next 2 items are to include those T&D, transmission and distribution costs, in our Quad 3 evaluation, as well as our Quad 4 planning looking ahead to 2023 to 26 quadrennium. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll pass to you.
Thanks, Commissioner Huebner. I'm going to join you at all of your alternatives. I was also at Alt 1 for all 4 decisions, approving the methodology and the recommendation to review this annually. And I'll tell you why. It's because, and I read all of the comments and I appreciate all of the comments that were submitted. But I think it's important for us to remember that avoided capacity, whether that's in the form of production, transmission, or distribution, they're all equally as important as avoided energy. And so in my mind, when we're doing this, we have a responsibility to look at the whole picture. CUB indicated that the last potential study for renewables was done in 2009. That is alarming to me. I think being a data-driven organization, it's important for us to have data and that data continue to be updated. Because as the industry that we regulate continues to change, we have to make sure that we're looking at information that's relevant to the point in time that we're making these decisions. So none of us knows what's going to happen with demand as things change in the industry, but I'm comfortable with going down this path because we need the data. We need to have a starting point. We're not setting anything in stone. If we come back and we evaluate this in a year and we see that we've missed the mark, we have the ability to make changes. But I think that this is an important first step, and that we should try as much as possible to be precise and to have our evaluations and our goals try at least to approximate reality. And so I think this is an important first step. And as I said, I'll join you at Alt 1 across the board.
Okay, great. Commissioner Nowak.
Thanks. I will not be joining in this inclusion of this. I dissented on including and looking at capacity when we looked at this last summer. When you read the memo, through the theme of the memo throughout is there's a lot of, I think the word data gap, that phrase appears several times. There's a lot of uncertainty in how to calculate this. There was not a discussion in the memo about how the growth of DERs will be, how that's going to impact that. I learned a new phrase the other day when I had a discussion about this with staff that they had with their evaluation work group, and it was a negative benefit. Didn't know there was. I'm going to start using that phrase. But there might be a negative benefit from adding some renewables. We don't know how that's going to calculate in. There is a reason why we haven't done this in our focus program. It is because it is too speculative, and we don't know where it's going to go. And I think it is dangerous to start putting something in there before we get the roadmap and how we're going to use it. I'm still not clear what the purpose of this is going to be used for. Focus already has a very favorable cost benefit ratio. So trying to understand what the value added would be here for this when we particularly can't get a precise calculation. While most states do include this, I think that is misleading to say we're an outlier because every state does it differently. And so, almost no state has a focus program like we do. We are one of few, which are the statewide, and one that includes both renewables and energy efficiency. So you can't just say, well, others are doing it, we should do it. Our programs are very different. We already have a very robust analysis. We spend a lot of money on analysis. I'm not sure that it is worth spending our evaluators' time that could be used for benefits for people who pay into the program, rather than trying to spread something out on put something in a spreadsheet that will potentially falsely inflate the number, the cost benefit number. I think we need to have a much better picture of what it's going to be used for and why, and how we're going to calculate it. I thought the comments from WA were very helpful here. And so I will not be supporting this. So I guess on most of them, alternative 4 on the first one on page 13, and then the other ones I'm at alternative 2.
Okay, did you have any response, Madam Chair? Otherwise I can make a motion.
No, I'm ready for your motion.
Okay. Just my response for Commissioner Nowak, I think as the world is going, we're looking at a lot of co-retirements, a lot of generation shift. A lot of states are engaging in these exact conversations and sort of looking at that whole picture of what are the energy costs, what are the capacity costs, and to the extent that we're reducing the need from buildings and homes, and we're reducing that need upstream. That to me does have benefits on the distribution and transmission system. This is an attempt to start quantifying them, and as Madam Chair said, we'll be looking at it in years to come to fine tune the data. So that's where I was comfortable with this. So in docket 5 FE 101, I'll make a motion that we directed the Division of Digital Access, Consumer and Environmental Affairs to draft an order in accordance with our discussion today.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And opposed?
No.
Okay.
Okay. That moves us to docket 9501 FE 124. This is the 2019 to 2023 Focus on Energy Evaluation contract. And Commissioner Huebner, you're leading this discussion as well.
All right. It's nice to put these together on the same day while we have our heads around Focus on Energy. So appreciate the staff lining this up. And I am the delegated commissioner, so I get a twofer today. Thank you. As you alluded to, Chair, this is about our renewable energy program within Focus on Energy, and specifically solar PV. And the last time that a potential study was done related to renewables was in 2009, leading into that quadrennial period. As the memo lays out, solar PV has become the most used, by far most used technology in the renewable energy program within Focus. And in an effort to streamline the work on this potential study, Cadmus and staff focused on solar PV here and not the rest of the different renewable technologies. So what's before us today is essentially an amendment to the contract. We're in the middle of doing the potential study for the energy efficiency potential. And I think it's important to remind folks a couple of things. One, the potential study that we do is for the potential for the whole state. Focus on Energy is obviously a big portion of our energy efficiency funding and the programs that we run and operate. But the potential study actually tells us what is the market, just the technical potential, but then also the market potential for what we can be doing for energy efficiency. And if we approve this today for solar PV, and I think that's really important as we look ahead. There was commenters and a lot of us know utilities are proposing solar programs themselves. We have a number of pilots related to solar that utilities are running, and we have a number of local governments that want to do more than what Focus or what any utility is doing, because they have their own city councils, county boards that are asking them to do that. I also think this is important because as we look ahead, again, this is for Focus on Energy and the potential for 2023 through 2026. So we're looking ahead here. And as we look into that quadrennial, we know that LED light bulbs, specifically for residential, which has been, first we had CFLs, then LEDs, has been a big chunk of our budget, a huge chunk of our savings. The national standards that are changing there are going to essentially really reduce the amount of energy savings we can get from LEDs. And so it's really going to be the next quad is going to be an opportunity to rebalance that residential portfolio and the business side to understand what measures are most cost effective. And I really think this type of study is going to be essential to figure out what the balance is between the renewables and the efficiency. And if we don't have this study, we're going to be really guessing in the dark without numbers to set a budget and to set savings goals related to solar. And then finally, I'll just mention the low income was mentioned by, I think, every single commenter, the low income segment for accessibility to solar. And so that was a common theme, and I'm excited that this study will be able to take advantage of it. This memo also went out for comment on January 20th. We had 8 public comments provided to us from a variety of perspectives. I think I've covered most of the high points. I don't know if either of my colleagues want to say anything initially. Otherwise, I'll just jump into my positions and then you can respond. So we have a few decision items. Again, I'll give mine all at once on page 14 and then on page 17. On page 14, the first question in front of us is, should we do the study including county level data as well as utility service level? As I alluded to, I think both are important. I think there's different audiences for both, but I think both will be important. Again, looking at the potential within Focus, but also this study will help understand the potential for this technology, the economic potential for this technology beyond just Focus, for potentially for utility programs or other local government programs. So I was at alternative 3 that would include both county level and utility level information. And then for the online panel, I was at alternative 2 and agreed and talked with staff This is a good opportunity to hear from homeowners. It's a good opportunity to hear from low-income customers in Wisconsin. And in addition to that, my understanding is Cadmus will be reaching out to our community action agencies to get their perspectives. And they've done that in the energy efficiency side, and they can do that for renewables to understand the low-income perspective better. And then finally, on page 17, I would be at alternative 1 to approve the potential study and direct the funds to come from our EERD research program, which has available budget. And I think this project will be the most timely thing we can do to prepare for that next quad with the EERD budget at this time. So with that, I'll pass to you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Huebner. So for this one, I was interested to hear from both of my colleagues. I was particularly interested in the comments that were provided by Aptum. And Aptum is our Focus on Energy Program Administrator. And they pointed out a couple of things. And so I was wanting to talk about this, since we don't get to talk to each other. And so I wanted to hear from both of you what you thought about Aptum's comments in particular. They mentioned that we know the potential is really great for solar, right? In fact, we know that the ability or the demand for solar in the state is far greater than what we can accommodate via Focus. So knowing that, my question then turns to, if we know clearly that demand is there, even as we saw the level of incentives go down, what's the best and most cost-effective use of our dollars when we're looking at this particular program? Does it make sense to be spending dollars when we all know that the demand is there? That was my first question. And then I really focused in, and you mentioned this, Tyler, or Commissioner Huebner, you mentioned this. I really focused in on the low to moderate income piece. And that is, again, we know that there are barriers there to adoption, but now it's time for us to do something. And I'm wondering, does it make sense to do a literature review or a demonstration project rather than the online panel research? Will that get us further down the road of where I believe we need to be? The fact that the level of incentives was decreased, yet the demand continues to increase, illustrates to me that perhaps we need to spend more time looking at the sector of our population that needs it, that needs those incentives. And so I wanted to hear from you both what you thought. At the end of the day, yes, again, I'll reiterate what I said in the last docket. We're a data-driven organization, and our charge is to look at the data and then make decisions based on that data. But where I will tell you that where I'm sort of struggling is, in my mind, we've got a ton of data that talks about the potential for solar, and we know that there are hurdles to overcome in the low to moderate income population. And I just feel like, what can we do to now do something about that? So that's a long way of saying I haven't yet decided where I am on these. I was all over the board this week. So
I'll just maybe respond in a couple ways, and then that love to hear from Commissioner Nowak regarding that point. And I think Wisconsin Utilities Association made the same point, that yes, the potential is great. We know there's obviously a lot of rooftops. We know there's a lot of open fields near larger, commercial industrial customers that could have solar panels. the reason I think this is important is because it's not just the technical potential where you could put the panels, but then it's the economic potential of which of those are cost effective. And then I think the next step that really is important is the numbers that will tell us the energy savings and the demand savings related to certain choices that we might make in quad 3. And I think especially sensitive is that question about the focus of energy savings versus demand savings is always a question that we have to decide. There's been a lot of comments in this docket and in general throughout Focus that need may be shifting over time, that it matters more when we save the energy, not just how much energy we save. I think that's going to be important. I think if we don't have this kind of data, and I think too, having it from Cadmus, so it's really apples to apples. They're doing the potential study for efficiency. They'll be doing the same type of calculations for renewables. I think that sort of level set of data will really help us understand what those trade-offs are when we get to that quadrennial planning of how much demand do we want to focus on, how much energy. If we choose a certain amount of budget of renewables, what does that get you on energy and demand versus choosing budgets for other technologies? Because we have historically set a specific budget for renewables. And so I think this would help us decide what that number should be. And on the LMI piece, I should note too, we have, I think you're exactly right, demonstration projects, literature reviews. I think there's some other work that our state energy office can continue to do and do in parallel. I know that we have submitted a proposal, I think it's through the NASEO, through the National Association of State Energy Offices, to do some low and moderate income solar work. So I think it's both and. I think this potential study helps us put numbers on that LMI segment. How much should we focus on it? What incentive levels might we need to create action within that segment? But then there's obviously more and other work to do. So that's kind of where I landed. So I don't know if that helps you or not.
It does. Thank you.
So Commissioner Nowak.
Thanks. Good discussion. I really am, well, you asked a question in your comments, Chair Bach. Why should we be spending money when the demand we already know is there? Should we? And the answer is no. I mean, we have dropped the incentives for solar so dramatically in a short amount of time, and demand grows. And that is great because solar is maturing. And that's a sign that we need to step out of the way. And we should spend these resources on things where we essentially have freeloaders here. And unfortunately, the more we spend this way is actually hurting the low to moderate income customers, because the incentives are going to middle upper income class individuals right now. So I think the best way to help that segment is to take a look at what is the cost of utility scale solar versus having all this rooftop solar, and what is the most economical choice. We've had so many discussions over the last several months over the hardship of people paying their bills, but now we're going to try to find ways. Let's focus on that, and let's try to keep these dollars in the market where we need them to go. This whole discussion is really, to me, getting beyond the scope of our statutory authority here. And I think this potential study does as well. It's not our job to promote a product that is available in the free market and make sure that everyone can get it. We have to sit back and say, what is the scope of our statutory authority within Focus? And I think now we're going to start a study that's looking at where the potential for rooftop solar is all around the state. I think we're getting a little beyond our skis here and need to be very careful in what is the purpose of the Focus on Energy program. I also think that we need to be careful about putting the Focus name on a study that might show that, because it could make it misleading to say that, well, there's much more potential for rooftop solar than utility scale solar, again, which we know is much more economical. And so I think we need to be very careful about making such an expansive project here that I don't think is our charge to do anything with. I understand that a lot of people don't have access to rooftop solar, and but we have to ask, whose job is it, and how does the legislature want us to help? Do they want us to help address that, and how do we do that? Until we have those questions, we should not be doing a study like this. We should, if we have $200,000 in Focus to spend on a study, I think, we need to start looking at, what's Focus doing with its dollars, and would these dollars be better just spent giving out as grants for other projects? So I think we have to be just really careful, and what the value of this is going to do is still escapes me, how it will be helpful for us moving forward. So I cannot support moving forward this potential study. We know people want solar. I think it is a waste of money to spend money, ratepayer dollars, to show us the answer we already know.
But to be clear, Commissioner Nowak, a potential study is clearly within our scope. I mean, potential studies predate me. I don't know if they predate you, but
they do. No, we've done them, but we're now starting to delve into subject matters that I'm not sure that was the intent of the Focus program. I mean, we've done studies relating to energy efficiency and, where are those untapped markets, but that doesn't mean that we can do a potential study on anything.
Yeah,
right,
I just want to make it clear that we can disagree with the contents of the potential study without taking that step of saying that somehow conducting the potential study is going beyond our legislative power. That argument to me is that's a little beyond what we're talking about. I think we can, I think it's great that we can have a robust discussion about the contents of the study, but then when that sort of argument starts to veer into, well, we don't have statutory authority, that's kind of where I put my hands up and say, actually, we do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just disagree. I mean, I think I wholeheartedly believe we have an ability to do the studies. It's the content of the studies that we're starting to get really close to a line that, we shouldn't be going towards.
And I guess I'll throw in one thing that's really changed, that we haven't done a potential study on renewables in a few cycles. We do the potential study, I think, every 4 years for energy efficiency. We did renewables essentially 12 years ago. So we didn't do it, 3 quads ago and 2 quads ago, or 2 and 1 quads ago. And now we're considering doing it again. And as I kind of said before, now that the cost of solar has come down so much, and we know the residential program in particular is going to be changing because LEDs are essentially phasing out because of a national federal standard. It's going to be a big question for us. What is the most cost-effective way to spend the approximately $40 million that we put into that residential budget? With the cost of solar coming down this much, I think it's going to be a question of where does solar fit in? Historically, it hasn't been in the stack of all the technologies we could do for residential. But that has changed because we know in the last 12 years, the cost of solar's come down, whatever the number is, 70 or 80%. So where that fits in that stack of eligible technologies for achievable savings, I think that's an open question. I think if we don't have a study like this, we really won't know the answer. Is solar the third most cost-effective measure for residential? Is it the 10th most? We won't know unless we have that apples to apples comparison.
And I can accept that, and I think that's reasonable, but I'm still struggling with the low to moderate income piece. And I'm wondering, does it make sense to ask to ask staff to go back and seek something in a, I guess I'm sort of in lieu of the online representative panel research. I would like to see maybe literature review and the cost of a potential demonstration project. I just think that that to me would yield more useful information. I don't know what you guys think about that.
You know, obviously I'm not prepared to support this as it is. I think we should compare, you know, what is the most economical for all citizens of the state, providing incentives for individual rooftop solar, you know, or building larger scale projects. Where are ratepayer dollars most efficiently spent?
Kate should be able to come get her.
Yeah, and a study was just done. I don't know how representative it was. It's not necessarily Wisconsin specific, but I saw it was in the headlines, specifically on that exact point, talking about the balance between utility scale and behind the meter solar and storage, and what the optimum mix would be. So I do think there's a lot more data, system planning, resource planning that's outside the scope of focus that our utilities should be doing to understand where on their distribution grid solar, storage, other things make sense. That's all got to happen as well. But that's not the Focus on Energy's program's goal. So, you know, what we're going to be faced with in the quad plan is how much budget, and with that budget, how much energy savings, how much demand savings, what are the goals we're setting for this program to achieve? And do we want to focus on certain program evolve? I think we're going to have some data to compare and contrast. If we change the program to focus on LMI only, what does that look like for savings? What does that look like for budget? So I think those are really great questions that we should get from this study. So Chair, you're at alternative.
Well, I
guess we should go with the sub-state one. Are you?
Yeah, so
alternative
sub-state 3? I am. Yep. So sub-state geography analysis and reporting, I'm at alt 3. And then for online representative panel research, I guess I would create my own alternative. And I would ask that it be modified, but modified to include literature review and or a demonstration project. And then for the study approval, I guess that would then put me at alt 2, where I would approve it with that modification related to LMI.
And I guess I'm gonna look to Christy, our head of our division, and see if you have any comments. You or staff have any thoughts about that approach to approve the budget for a focus on LMI with that dollar amount that was set aside for online, but essentially redirect that or focus that even tighter on LMI between literature review and or demonstration. Does that work from your perspective? Do you have comments or concerns?
I'll ask Mitch or Joe if they have any concerns with that approach.
This is Mitch. I don't know for sure if the amount identified for that panel research would be appropriate for the other activities. I would have to talk with the contractor to know kind of how that would match up and get a little more clarity.
Okay.
You could set a not to exceed.
Yeah,
and
that's what I was thinking, that it was an up to amount. That I would be comfortable approving, the study up to the identified amount, but just ask that $12,209 that's earmarked for the online research panel, I would ask that they look for ways to dive a little deeper. I guess that's my goal is I want to be sure that we're getting the data that is going to be the most helpful to us.
Christy, you're nodding. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Okay, great. I will join you there, Chair,
Okay.
and I can make a motion to that effect. Commissioner Nowak, did you have any other final thoughts, final comments?
I will write them in my dissent, which you
Okay.
can.
Okay, great. In docket 9501 FE 124, I move that we approve a solar PV potential study and direct our Office of Energy Innovation staff to draft an order in accordance with our discussion today.
I will second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Huebner. That concludes our official business for today. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 25th, 2021 at 10:30 a.m. No open meeting next week.
We
Adjourn?
stand adjourned until Thursday, February 25th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.